The film opens with a psychiatrist named Miranda Gray talking to a criminally insane patient, Chloe. Chloe shares that until today, the devil would visit her cell to rape her from time to time. During their conversation, Chloe expresses how frustrating it is to have everyone think you're insane and not believe your story. However, Miranda simply brushes her off and ends their session, which makes Chloe mad at her. Afterwards, Miranda walks to the other side of the asylum to report to her boss, Doug. It appears that Miranda has worked with Chloe for some time but hasn't made any progress, as Chloe remains delusional as ever. Hearing this, her boss, who also happens to be her husband, tries to give her a new perspective on the matter. Afterwards, the happy couple shares a kiss, but they get interrupted by Pete, a fellow psychiatrist who uncannily looks like our favorite superhero. After her husband leaves, Pete flirts with her and hands her a set of files. Miranda then proceeds to her office, where she goes on to write reports about Chloe until late at night. When she gets tired of work, she goes for a swim at a facility before heading home. On her way out, she greets Don, a kind security guard whom she's close to, and afterwards runs into Pete and shares an umbrella with him. Based on their interactions, it is obvious that Pete likes her. It is storming on her drive home, making it hard for her to see. On the way, she discovers that the road is blocked because the police found a sinkhole, so she's forced to take another path through a bridge. She calls her husband, Doug, to inform him that she'd be home soon, but soon enough, she lost the connection. All of a sudden, she comes across a woman standing in the middle of the road, forcing her to swerve aside sharply. Afterwards, she approaches the woman, who has a gash on her chest. Realizing the woman probably needs help, she tries to guide her to the car, but when they touch, the woman sets on fire. The next thing we know, Miranda wakes up in one of the observation cells at the same place she worked. She begins to freak out, causing the staff to step in and try to restrain her. Miranda only calms down when her co-worker, Pete, steps in to have a one-on-one chat with her. According to Pete, she's been here for 3 days, during which she kept having seizures and only woke up now. Pete then asks her if she remembers anything, but she doesn't seem to recall much of what happened after driving home that night. She tries to tell Pete that she saw a woman on the bridge, but he doesn't seem to think that's relevant. Pete goes on to tell her that her husband, Doug, is dead and that Miranda has been accused of his murder after she got home that night. Hearing this causes Miranda to react violently, and so several staff members come in to restrain and sedate her. When she goes under, she sees flashes of a bloody scene. On the next day, she joins other patients at the recreation area, where she is surrounded by her former patients. There she meets again with Chloe, who tells her that from now on she'll understand how it feels to tell the truth and not have anyone believe you. Before Chloe walks away, she hands her a ripped page from a newspaper, covering the murder of Doug, which was allegedly done by Miranda. When Miranda's back in her cell that night, she hears someone breathing outside of her cell. Then she sees fog in her glass, followed by an invisible hand spelling the words "not alone." Still trying to remain logical, she convinces herself that she's dreaming and curls up in the corner. Oddly enough, morning suddenly arrives as a nurse walks into her cell with some daily medications for her to take. That morning, she took her first shower with the other patients, during which she began to hear ominous whispers. Miranda suddenly sees the girl from the bridge, scaring her and causing her to move around the crowd, which confuses the other women. As the girl draws nearer, she begins to repeatedly slash Miranda's arm, causing the other patients to run away in fear. Later, the staff immediately bandaged Miranda's wounds and deduced that Miranda cut herself with a scalpel she somehow stole. Pete walks in to check up on her and talk to her, and he still thinks of her as deluded. Trying to make sense of things, Miranda begins asking him a series of questions about their relationship with one another. Here Pete admits that he wanted to have an affair with Miranda, and Miranda also admits that she wanted to be with him, but neither of them ever made a move because Doug was around. To catch him off guard, Miranda suddenly points out that since her husband isn't around anymore, she and Pete can be together, but Pete tells her that he simply wants to help her get better for now. Later that day, Miranda calls out to Phil, another psychiatrist at the facility. She informs him that because of her personal entanglements with Pete, it's best that she gets handled by another doctor, but Phil coldly rejects this suggestion. That same day, Miranda gets a visit from Teddy, her attorney, who informs her that the court hearing for her case takes place next week. Since all the evidence is stacked against her, Miranda's only shot at freedom is if she pleads for temporary insanity. Miranda is appalled to hear this and tries to convince Teddy that she is not crazy and that she did not kill her husband, but he doesn't believe her. The chief of police, Ryan, who happens to be Doug's best friend, then joins them in the room, while Pete keeps watch nearby. He tries to ask her details about the murder, but is unable to stay professional and ends up demanding Miranda explain why she killed his best friend. He then takes out the pictures taken from the crime scene to show Miranda just how brutal the murder was. As she looks at the pictures, fresh blood starts smearing her injured arm, so she rips the bandages off, revealing the words "not alone" carved on her arm. This doesn't help her case because similar writings were found in her bedroom at the crime scene. She freaks out, so the staff sedates her again. While she's asleep, she gets more memory flashes of what happened that night, but in reverse. It started with her killing Doug with an axe, and then we went further back to her standing near the bridge, trying to help the girl in the rain. It appears that the girl possessed her and made her kill her husband. On the next day, Pete guides Miranda to see Phil, who now serves as the head of the facility. Miranda tearfully admits that she now remembers being there during the night of the murder, but she wasn't alone. She then sees a picture of a girl in Phil's office and picks it up. It turns out to be none other than the girl she saw at the bridge, but Phil says that's impossible because the girl was his daughter, Rachel Parsons, who committed suicide 4 years ago. When Miranda is back in her cell that night, she speaks to thin air, asking if the entity that's been bothering her is the ghost of Rachel Parsons. If the answer is yes, she asks the ghost to open the cell door for her. Miraculously, the cell door opens right after, so Miranda seizes this opportunity to walk down the halls. She then sees the figure of a ghostly girl walking through the wall. Miranda tries to escape by stealing an unattended screwdriver and using it to break into Pete's office and steal his keys. When she rummages through his desk, the computer turns on, showing that he's been looking up information about Rachel Parsons' suicide. Another open tab next to it shows the security footage of solitary confinement, with Rachel Parsons' ghost staring into the camera. Remembering that Chloe is locked in solitary, Miranda rushes to her aid and enters a hall with rapidly blinking lights. She approaches Chloe's cell and finds that she is getting attacked by a figure with a burning girl tattooed on his chest. Scared, Miranda runs away screaming, drawing the attention of 2 staff members who immediately pin her down. Miranda then gets taken to consult with Pete and tries telling him about the tattooed man she saw in Chloe's solitary cell. She's also convinced Rachel Parsons did not kill herself but was murdered. Pete, however, calls her delusional and leaves in frustration. That next day, Chloe is finally out of solitary confinement, so Miranda goes up to her and apologizes for never believing her stories before. Chloe embraces her but tells her that the devil says he will come after Miranda next. Because she escaped her cell the other day, Miranda has now been moved to a solitary cell. That night, the lights start blinking, and the ghost of Rachel Parsons suddenly appears and attacks her. The security guards witness this through the CCTV and rush to her cell. However, when they get there, she immediately knocks them down and steals their keys. Miranda takes her way out of the facility through its winding halls and stairs, while the guards search for her. She then decides to hide in the pool area and submerges herself to hide at the bottom of the dark swimming pool. But right as the guards leave, fortunately, the water muffles her scream. She exits the pool, and when the lights go out, she sneaks into the lobby, where she comes across Don, the nice security guard, and silently pleads with him not to tell his friends where she is. When his friends leave, Don even hands her his car keys to escape. At last, she makes it to the parking lot and drives away with Don's car. Surprisingly, Rachel Parsons' ghost tags along in the backseat and tampers with the brakes, causing Miranda to almost run into a passing truck. But just as Miranda sighs in relief, she starts driving right for the sinkhole, but luckily the car stops just before she falls in. She then proceeds to head to the home she once shared with her husband and finds all the lights switched on upon her arrival. When she enters the house, she hears Doug pleading for his life and finds him maimed and bloody. Not just that, she sees herself swinging an axe and ending his life. After the memory flash is gone, she walks past the blood-spattered hall and enters the bedroom. Here she finds herself submerged in a bloody tub and rising to see herself in the mirror, during which she screams as if to fight Rachel's ghost from possessing her. With her memories now complete, Miranda cries while looking through pictures of her and Doug, until Rachel's ghost suddenly whispers the words Willow Creek. Miranda then recalls that Doug would take a trip there every once in a while, and so she visits Willow Creek, which turns out to be a ranch that Doug owned. As she explores the barn, she finds a box of film rolls and a hatch on the floor, which leads to an ominous room in the basement. Downstairs, Miranda turns on the lights, gasping in horror as she sees a bloody bed with restraints, boxes of drugs, and a video camera aimed at the bed. When Miranda looks through the files on the video camera, she finds footage of Doug forcibly kissing a restrained woman. It turns out that Doug was living a double life, kidnapping, torturing, raping, and killing women. All of a sudden, she hears footsteps upstairs and tries to hide, but gets cornered by a policeman holding a gun. Shocking them both, a pair of arms reach for Miranda from behind. It turns out to be the girl on the video. Apparently, the girl's name is Tracy, and she's been reported missing for the past 2 weeks. The media is all over this revelation and flocks to the police station to interview the police chief, Ryan. Miranda's attorney, Teddy, and Pete try to defend Miranda because now her motive for killing Doug is justified, plus, she just saved a girl's life, but Ryan still assures them that she's still a murder suspect. Meanwhile, Miranda is now held in the interrogation room at the police station and gets a visit from her colleague, Dr. Phil, who is shocked to learn that Doug was capable of such a vile thing. Here, Miranda calmly explains to him that she's certain his daughter, Rachel, did not commit suicide. Instead, she was also one of Doug's victims, and she knows this because Rachel's ghost has been visiting her. Miranda now believes that Rachel is trying to send another message and tries to convince Pete to help her with this, but he still won't buy into her ghost stories. However, when he gets to his office, he starts researching about tattoos of women in flames anyway. Because Pete won't help her, Miranda asks to see the police chief and pleads her case. She believes that the meaning of the phrase "not alone" means that there are 2 killers and not just Doug. The accomplice must also have a tattoo of a woman in flames on his chest. Unexpectedly, Chief Don seems to believe her and asks her to profile what kind of person they might be looking for. Using her expertise as a psychiatrist, Miranda constructs a psychological profile of the second perpetrator, and as she says all this, the chief looks uncomfortable. It is at this point that she realizes the profile perfectly fits. Sheriff Ryan concludes that the only reason he was so willing to talk to her was to cover his own tracks. Ryan tries to sedate her, but she slips out of his grip. He chases her and starts wildly shooting, while we wonder, where did everyone at the police station go? We can see that one bullet hit the gas pipe. The sheriff decides to take his shirt off, for no other reason other than the fact that he's a psycho. While Miranda hides, Ryan picks up a shotgun and begins to go around the room. He's proudly confessing that Rachel Parsons was Doug's and his first victim, and that they worked together to abduct, rape, and murder a string of local women. As he's about to flip over Miranda's desk, a shadow catches his sight from the other side, so he shoots and follows it. He then sees a woman standing in front of him behind the glass, believing it to be Miranda. He fires another bullet, breaking the glass, and is shocked to see Rachel's corpse. Scared, he begins shooting at it, igniting the gas surrounding him and causing a subsequent explosion that sets him ablaze. As a final blow, Miranda picks up a gun and shoots him in the head. It is only now that Pete arrives, telling Miranda that he's sorry for not believing her before. 1 year later, Chloe and Miranda are both out of the asylum, and Miranda's charges are dropped. Chloe thanks Miranda for helping her before getting inside a taxi, and Miranda resumes her walk alone. Miranda then comes across a child standing in the middle of the road and getting run over by a passing fire truck, but he turns out to be a ghost, probably asking for Miranda's help. The movie ends with a missing child's poster of the boy we just saw, meaning that Miranda has yet another murder case to solve.